Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the final wave of human ships drop out of hyperspace. 200 massive supercarriers now formed a perfect circle around the alien homeworld. Each ship was 5 kilometers long and carried thousands of fighters and bombers. The message was clear and simple: humanity would not be pushed around anymore. The fleet had taken 3 years to build. Every shipyard in human space worked day and night to make these giant warships. Each carrier was like a floating city with thick armor and powerful weapons. The human colonies had been taken by force and their people enslaved. The Galactic Council did nothing to help. Now it was time for humanity to take action. Commander Lisa Parker stood at her station and reported. The ship positions. All carriers are in formation, sir. We are holding position 1 million kilometers from the planet. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. This was the largest human fleet ever assembled. Down on the planet's surface, Empress. Vextara watched the human ships through her palace windows. Her 6 arms shook with anger. The humans had been nothing but primitive animals when first contact happened 50 years ago. Now they dared to surround her world with their crude metal ships. The Empress had ruled for over 1,000 years, and no one had ever challenged her like this. Captain Roy Stevens commanded the UES Defiance and listened to Admiral Morrison's fleet-wide message. Phase 1 is complete. We hold position until the Empress agrees to free our people. The human colonies had been absorbed into the Zephyrian Empire over the past 10 years. The aliens claimed the worlds were empty wilderness, but millions of human colonists lived there. They were taken as slaves and forced to work in alien mines and factories. The Galactic Council had dismissed human complaints as the whining of a junior species. Humanity was new to space, and the older alien races did not take them seriously. But the humans had learned fast. They built ships designed for war, not exploration. Each supercarrier was a weapon of mass destruction floating in space. Lieutenant Amy Collins monitored alien communications from her post on the UES horizon. The Zephyrian military channels were full of panic. Their commanders had never faced a human fleet this large. Most alien species built elegant ships that looked like works of art. Humans built floating fortresses, designed to take damage and keep fighting. The human ships were ugly by galactic standards. They had thick armor plating and massive weapon systems. There was no attempt to make them beautiful. Function was more important than form. The aliens had laughed at human ship design when they first saw it. They were not laughing now, Empress. Vextara called her military advisors to the throne room. General Crixton was her most trusted commander. He had served the Empire for 300 years and won countless battles, but he had never faced humans in large numbers before. My Empress, the human fleet is unlike anything we have encountered. Their ships are primitive, but there are so many of them. The Empress slammed her fist on the throne. They are insects, barely out of their caves, and they think they can threaten the mighty Zephyrian Empire. But even as she spoke the words, she felt doubt creeping in. The humans had appeared from nowhere and built a fleet that rivaled her own. How had they done it so quickly? Captain Helen Murphy commanded the UES Valor and studied the alien homeworld through her ship's sensors. The planet was beautiful with blue oceans and white clouds. Cities made of crystal and metal dotted the surface, but underneath the beauty was a dark truth. Millions of human slaves worked in hidden factories and mines. They had been separated from their families and forced to labor for their alien masters. The human fleet was not just about revenge. It was about justice. Every ship carried rescue teams and medical supplies. The plan was to free the slaves and bring them home, but first they had to deal with the Zephyrian military. The aliens would not give up their slaves without a fight, Commander. Pete Watson aboard the UES Thunder ran final checks on his ship's weapon systems. The supercarriers were armed with railguns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds. They also had particle beam weapons and missile launchers. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. 200 ships together could level a planet, but the humans did not want to destroy the planet. They wanted to free their people. This made the mission much harder. They had to fight with restraint while the aliens could use their full power. It was a disadvantage, but humanity had accepted it. They would not become monsters to defeat monsters, Lieutenant. Karen Hayes worked at the communications station and intercepted alien messages. The Zephyrian military was preparing for battle. Ancient defense systems were being activated across the planet. Weapons that had not been used for centuries were coming online. The Empress was calling in her entire battle fleet from across the Empire. Admiral Morrison walked to the center of the bridge and addressed his crew. Today we make history. For 50 years, humanity has been treated as a second-class species. We have been ignored, insulted, and attacked. Our people have been enslaved and our worlds stolen, but today that ends. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around anymore. The crew cheered and went back to their stations with renewed purpose. They all knew someone who had been taken by the aliens. Friends, family members, and loved ones working as slaves on distant worlds. This was personal for every human in the fleet. The space around the alien homeworld was tense with anticipation. 200 human supercarriers faced the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy. The outcome would determine the future of humanity among the stars. Would they be forever viewed as a weak junior species, or would they claim their place as equals in the galactic community? Empress Vexthura stood on her palace balcony and stared up at the human fleet. The ships were dark shapes against the stars, like harbingers of doom. She had ruled through fear and violence for 1,000 years. Her empire stretched across dozens of star systems. Billions of aliens and enslaved species served her will. But now she faced an enemy unlike any other. The humans did not want territory or resources. They wanted something much more dangerous. They wanted freedom for all sentient beings. This idea was poison to the Empire's way of life. If other species heard about it, they might rebel. The human fleet was not just a military threat. It was a threat to the very foundation of Zephyrian society. The stage was set for the greatest battle in galactic history. 200 human supercarriers against the full might of the Zephyrian Empire. The fate of millions of enslaved beings hung in the balance. The galaxy would never be the same. The Zephyrian response came faster than anyone expected. Empress Vexthura activated the ancient defense system that had protected her homeworld for thousands of years. Massive energy cannons rose from hidden positions across the planet's surface. Each weapon was the size of a city block and had been built by the predecessors. The predecessors were a dead race whose technology still surpassed most civilizations in the galaxy. Admiral Morrison watched his tactical display as energy readings spiked across the planet. The power levels were unlike anything in human records. All ships prepare for incoming fire. Evasive maneuvers now. His voice carried across the fleet communication channels to every ship captain. The first salvo turned space into a light show of destruction. Beams of concentrated plasma shot out from the planet's surface. Each beam carried enough energy to destroy a small moon. The UES Courage took a direct hit and its shields flared bright blue before failing completely. The supercarrier's thick armor held but barely. Scorch marks appeared across the hull as the plasma ate through the outer layers. Captain Helen Murphy commanded the use valor and coordinated the fleet's response. Return fire on those surface installations, all weapons free. The human carriers unleashed their own devastating firepower. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds while particle beams cut through space like swords of light. Missile swarms launched from every ship and streaked toward the planet's surface. The bombardment was relentless and terrifying. Explosions lit up the planet's atmosphere as human weapons struck the surface. But the alien shields held firm against the assault. The defensive barrier around the planet seemed to absorb the human attacks without taking damage. Commander Pete Watson aboard the U's Thunder was the first to understand what was happening. Admiral, those are not normal deflector shields. The entire planet is protected by some kind of quantum barrier field. Our weapons are being absorbed and redirected. Back at us. As if to prove his point, a spread of human missiles suddenly reversed course and headed back toward the fleet. The UES Stalwart barely managed to destroy the returning missiles with its point defense systems. Laser turrets tracked the incoming projectiles and shot them down one by one. The explosions were dangerously close to the ship's hull. It was clear that the human fleet was facing technology far beyond their understanding. Empress Vexthera stood in her command center and watched the battle unfold. Her advisors had warned her about human determination, but she had not listened. Now she saw the truth with her own eyes. The humans did not retreat even when faced with superior technology. They adapted and kept fighting. This was both impressive and terrifying. The Empress opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Her voice was cold and filled with ancient authority. Foolish humans, you have awakened the full fury of the Zephyrian Empire. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed, and your species will serve as slaves for the rest of your miserable existence. The threat was broadcast on all frequencies so every human ship could hear it. Lieutenant Karen Hayes worked at the communications station on the UES Liberty and detected massive hyperspace signatures throughout the star system. Sir, we have incoming ships, multiple formations, and they are huge. It looks like the entire Zephyrian battle fleet is arriving. The sensor readings were almost too large to believe. The alien armada that emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Crystalline vessels seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to target. Biomechanical ships pulsed with organic life and moved like living creatures. Ancient dreadnoughts crackled with predecessor technology and radiated power. Over 3,000 ships in total, and each one was a masterwork of alien engineering. Admiral Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the enemy fleet deploy. They were vastly outnumbered, but retreat was not an option. Millions of human slaves were counting on this rescue mission. All ships prepare for full engagement. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not be intimidated. His words were broadcast to every ship in the fleet. The alien ships moved with otherworldly grace as they approached the human formation. Some vessels phased in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target. Others seemed to teleport short distances, avoiding incoming fire. The technology gap was enormous, but humans had one advantage. They had been preparing for this fight for 3 years. Captain Don Foster commanded the UES Retribution and engaged the lead alien vessels. His ship's experimental weapons had been designed specifically to fight advanced alien technology. The gravitational cannons created space-time distortions that could tear apart enemy shields. But the alien ships were fast and maneuverable. The first major clash happened near the UES horizon as a group of crystalline vessels attacked the human formation. The alien ships fired beams of pure energy that could cut through armor like paper. The human response was brutal and direct. They concentrated their firepower on individual targets and overwhelmed them with sheer volume of fire. Commander Beth Turner led a fighter squadron from the UES Nemesis and engaged the biomechanical ships. These vessels were alive and could heal damage as fast as it was inflicted, but she noticed something important. Each healing cycle was slower than the last. The creatures were getting tired. All fighters concentrate on the bioships. Keep hitting them until they cannot regenerate anymore. The space around the planet became a hellscape of exploding ships and energy beams. Human supercarriers were built like flying fortresses and could absorb tremendous damage while continuing to fight. The alien vessels were elegant and deadly, but they had never faced an enemy like this before. Captain Lisa Miller aboard the UES Dominion coordinated a breakthrough assault on the alien formation. We have opened a corridor through their defensive line. All ships pushed through to the planet's surface defenses. The human fleet moved as one toward their ultimate target. The massive predecessor weapons on the planet's surface continued to fire, but now the human ships were close enough to use their most powerful weapons. Antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the surface installations. Each torpedo carried enough destructive power to crack a continent in half. Empress Vexthara watched in horror as her ancient defenses began to fail. The quantum barrier that had protected her world for eons flickered and died under the sustained human assault. Explosions erupted across the planet's surface as the predecessor weapons were destroyed one by one. Her most trusted advisor, General Crixton, delivered the news she had been dreading. "My Empress, the human fleet has broken through our outer defenses. They are targeting the palace directly." The general's voice was filled with disbelief. The defenses had never failed before. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and for the first time in her 1,000-year reign, Empress Vexthara felt real fear. The battle began in earnest as the Zephyrian fleet closed to weapons range. Their ships moved with supernatural grace and seemed to dance through space. They could phase in and out of normal reality, making them nearly impossible to target with CONVNTIONAL weapons. The humans responded with brutal efficiency and concentrated their fire on isolated alien vessels. Captain Don Foster commanded the UES Retribution and discovered the key to victory by pure accident. During a particularly intense exchange, his ship's experimental gravitational weapons malfunctioned. The malfunction created a massive space-time distortion that caught 3 Zephyrian cruisers in its field. To everyone's amazement, the alien ships could not phase shift away from the distortion. "All units, this is Foster. Gravitational weapons can lock their phase drives. Target them with everything we have." The message spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Every ship captain immediately began adjusting their tactics to use this new discovery. The human fleet adapted instantly to the new information. Every carrier began deploying gravitational mines throughout the battle zone. They also focused their artificial gravity generators on enemy ships to prevent them from using their phase technology. The Zephyrians suddenly found themselves unable to use their primary advantage in battle without their phase-shifting ability. The alien ships were trapped in a straight slugging match with an enemy that had been designed exactly for that kind of warfare. Human supercarriers were built to absorb damage and keep fighting. They had thick armor and redundant systems that could function even when heavily damaged. Commander Beth Turner led a squadron of fighters from the UES Nemesis and noticed something crucial about the biomechanical ships. The bioships are healing their damage faster than we can inflict it, but they are also getting tired. Each regeneration cycle is slower than the last one. This observation would prove vital to the battle's outcome. Admiral Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. "All fighters concentrate on the bioships. Keep hitting them until they cannot regenerate anymore." The human fighter squadrons swarmed the living vessels like angry wasps. They fired continuously at the same targets to overwhelm their healing abilities. The space around the alien homeworld became a hellscape of exploding ships and colliding energy beams. Debris from destroyed vessels created hazardous clouds that damaged other ships. The vacuum of space was filled with the light of weapons fire and the brief flashes of dying vessels. Human carriers, built like flying fortresses, absorbed tremendous punishment while continuing to fight back. The Zephyrian vessels were elegant and deadly, but they had never faced an enemy willing to trade damage for tactical advantage. The humans seemed to care more about completing their mission than preserving their own lives. Captain Lisa Miller aboard the UES Dominion coordinated the breakthrough assault through the alien defensive lines. "We have opened a corridor through their defensive perimeter. All ships push through to the planet's surface defenses." The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation despite taking heavy casualties. The massive predecessor weapons on the planet's surface continued to fire their devastating energy beams. But now the human fleet was close enough to use their most powerful weapons against the surface installations. Antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the planet, each one carrying enough destructive power to crack an. The torpedoes struck the ancient defense systems with incredible force. Explosions erupted across the planet's surface as installations that had stood for millennia were destroyed in seconds. The quantum barrier that had protected the world flickered and began to fail. Under the sustained assault, Empress Vexthara watched in horror as her ancient defenses crumbled before the human attack. The weapons had been built by the predecessors and were supposed to be indestructible. Yet the crude human technology was tearing them apart through sheer destructive power and determination. General Crixton delivered the crushing news to his Empress. My Empress, the human fleet has broken through our outer defenses. They are targeting the palace directly. The general had served the Empire for 3 centuries and had never seen defenses fail so completely. The crystalline ships of the Zephyrian fleet began to crack under the sustained human assault. Their elegant hulls were designed for energy efficiency, not brutal combat. The human ships fired continuously without regard for energy conservation. They had been built with massive reactors specifically to sustain prolonged battles, Lieutenant. Amy Collins monitored alien communications and detected growing panic in their ranks. "Sir, the alien fleet is starting to break formation. Several ships are attempting to retreat from the battle zone." The disciplined Zephyrian military was falling apart under pressure they had never experienced before. Captain Roy Stevens commanded the UES Defiance and pressed the attack against a group of alien dreadnoughts. These ancient vessels were covered in predecessor technology and seemed almost invincible, but even they began to show damage under concentrated human fire. "Keep firing. Even their best ships have limits." The biomechanical vessels that had seemed so fearsome at the battles beginning were now dying in large numbers. Their regenerative abilities had been overwhelmed by continuous human attacks. The living ships writhed in pain as they lost the ability to heal themselves. Some began to flee the battle entirely. Commander Pete Watson aboard the UES Thunder noticed that the alien phase technology was completely useless against gravitational weapons. All ships maintain gravitational fields around enemy vessels. Do not let them escape using phase shifts. The human fleet had turned the aliens' greatest advantage into a liability. The tide of battle was clearly turning in humanity's favor. The superior alien technology was being overcome by human determination and adaptability. Ships that had seemed invincible were burning in space. The mighty Zephyrian Empire was learning what it meant to face an enemy that refused to surrender. Captain Helen Murphy commanded the U's Valor and led the final assault on the planet's surface defenses. Her ship's weapons carved through the ancient installations like a hot knife through butter. "Target the palace defenses. We need to reach the Empress directly." The human fleet was closing in on its ultimate objective. The palace shields that had protected the Empress for 1,000 years began to flicker under the human bombardment. Energy readings showed that the defensive systems were failing rapidly. The humans were moments away from achieving their goal of reaching the planetary ruler. Empress Vexthara stood in her command center and watched her empire's greatest fleet being destroyed by primitive human vessels. The impossible was happening before her eyes. Her advanced technology was being defeated by crude but effective human tactics. For the first time in her long reign, she began to understand that she might actually lose this battle. The final phase of the conflict was about to begin, and the fate of millions of enslaved beings hung in the balance. As the human fleet pressed their advantage, Admiral Morrison made a decision that would define the future of galactic politics. Instead of ordering a full planetary bombardment, he commanded the fleet to establish a blockade pattern around the alien homeworld. The order surprised everyone who heard it. "All ships hold fire. We are not here to commit genocide." The announcement stunned both his officers and the Zephyrian defenders. Every human ship had enough firepower to level cities, but the Admiral was choosing restraint over destruction. Captain Sam Rodriguez commanded the UES Intrepid and was the first to voice the question everyone was thinking. "Sir, we have them beaten. Why are we not finishing this fight?" His confusion was shared by every ship. Captain in the fleet, Morrison's response was broadcast to every ship in the human armada. "Because we are not them. We are here to free our people, not to become the monsters the galaxy thinks we are." The words carried across space and reached alien ears as well as human ones. The tactical pause allowed Commander Greg Bennett aboard the UES Vigilant to detect something remarkable on his sensors. "Admiral, I am picking up human life signs on the planet's surface, massive concentrations in the industrial sectors." The discovery changed everything about the mission. The enslaved colonists were still alive and forced to work in Zephyrian factories and mines. Millions of human prisoners labored under alien masters across the planet's surface. A full bombardment would have killed them all along with the alien population. The Admiral's decision had saved countless innocent lives. Lieutenant Sophie Adams was the fleet's xenobiologist and made another crucial discovery while analyzing the biomechanical ships. Sir, the Zephyrian bioships are not just vessels. They are living beings, sentient creatures that have been enslaved and weaponized by the Empire. The revelation shocked the entire command staff. The humans were not just fighting ships, but enslaved aliens forced to serve the Zephyrian war machine. These creatures had been captured and modified to serve as living weapons. They had no choice but to fight for their captors. Admiral Morrison immediately ordered his forces to disable rather than destroy the biomechanical vessels. Empress Vexthara monitored human communications from her palace and was bewildered by their behavior. In her experience, superior species dominated inferior ones completely. The concept of mercy was alien to her worldview. She could not understand why the humans were not pressing their advantage. Captain Joe Martinez led the rescue operation aboard the UES Liberator and coordinated with ground teams to locate the human prisoners. We have found them, Admiral, approximately 2 million human colonists across 17 labor camps. They are in bad shape, but they are alive. The news brought hope to the entire fleet. The rescue teams had been prepared for this moment for 3 years. Every ship carried medical supplies and transport capacity for freed prisoners. The human fleet was not just a military force, but a rescue operation on a massive scale. They had come to bring their people home. The Empress finally understood the true scope of the human threat. This was not just about military superiority, but about a completely different philosophy of warfare. The humans fought not just with weapons, but with ideals that could inspire other oppressed species throughout the galaxy. General Crixton brought her the reports she had been dreading. My Empress, we are receiving surrender requests from bioships across the fleet. The humans are freeing them. The liberated alien vessels were breaking their programming and turning against their former masters. The freed bioships began attacking Zephyrian vessels with desperate fury. Creatures that had been enslaved for centuries finally had the chance to strike back at their oppressors. The Zephyrian fleet, already battered by the human assault, now found itself facing rebellion from within its own ranks. Commander Nick Hayes aboard the UES Stalwart established communication with the freed bioships. This is Commander Hayes of the Terran Federation. You are free beings now. We offer you sanctuary among the stars. The response came in dozens of different alien languages, but the meaning was universal. The liberated creatures expressed gratitude, hope, and a burning desire for revenge against the Zephyrian Empire. Some had been enslaved for hundreds of years and had never known freedom. The human offer of sanctuary was like a miracle to beings who had given up hope. Captain Paul Turner commanded the UES Defiance and watched as more bioships broke free from Zephyrian control. Admiral, the enemy fleet is falling apart. The bioships are attacking their own side. The tactical situation was changing rapidly as the enslaved creatures joined the human cause. The Zephyrian military commanders found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts. Human ships pressed the attack from outside while their own bioships rebelled from within. The carefully organized alien fleet was collapsing into chaos and confusion. Lieutenant Chris Wilson was the fleet's chief science officer aboard the UES Horizon and detected new energy readings from the planet's surface. Admiral, something is happening on the primary moon. I am reading massive gravitational fluctuations. The readings were unlike anything in human records. Admiral Morrison studied the sensor data with growing concern. The energy patterns suggested something far more dangerous than conventional weapons. Analysis, Wilson, what are we looking at? The science officer worked frantically at his console to understand the readings. It appears to be some kind of stellar manipulation device, sir. Someone is trying to destabilize the system's star. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human command structure. The Empress was attempting something unthinkable. Captain Lisa Wong commanded the UES Valiant and confirmed the readings from her own sensors. Sir, the star is showing signs of gravitational stress. If this continues, we could be looking at a supernova event. The entire star system was in danger of destruction. The Empress's final gambit was becoming clear. If she could not defeat the humans, she would destroy them along with herself and everything else in the star system. It was the ultimate act of spite from a ruler who had never known defeat. Commander, Julia Roberts aboard the UES Nemesis coordinated emergency evacuations from the outer system. All civilian ships begin immediate evacuation procedures. We may have only hours before total system collapse. The stakes had suddenly become much higher than anyone had imagined. The human fleet faced an impossible choice. They could retreat and save themselves but abandon millions of enslaved beings to certain death. Or they could stay and try to prevent the destruction of an entire star system. For Admiral Morrison, there was no real choice at all. All ships maintained position. We did not come this far to abandon our people now. The decision was made, and the human fleet prepared for their greatest challenge yet. In her desperation, Empress Vexthara activated the Empire's ultimate weapon known as the Stellar Cascade device. Hidden deep in the core of the primary moon, the ancient predecessor technology could destabilize the system star and create a supernova that would destroy everything within 50 light-years. The device was a weapon of last resort that even she had hesitated to use. The device's activation sent gravitational shockwaves throughout the entire star system. Lieutenant Chris Wilson aboard the UES Horizon detected the anomaly immediately. As his instruments went wild with readings, "Admiral, something is very wrong with the star. I am reading massive gravitational fluctuations that are getting stronger by the minute." Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays. The system's sun began to pulse with increasing intensity. The star's surface was showing signs of instability that could only mean one thing. Analysis. Wilson, what exactly are we looking at here? The science officer's face was pale as he studied the data. It is a stellar destabilization cascade, sir. Someone is trying to make the star go supernova. If this continues, we have maybe 6 hours before the entire system is destroyed. The timeline was terrifyingly short and left little room for error or hesitation. The Empress's final gambit was now clear to everyone in the human fleet. If she could not defeat them in battle, she would destroy them along with herself and everything else in the star system. It was the ultimate act of spite from a ruler who had never known defeat in her 1,000-year reign. Captain Paul Turner commanded the UES Defiance and voiced what everyone was thinking. "Admiral, we need to evacuate immediately. There is no way to stop a stellar cascade once it reaches critical mass." The logical choice was to retreat and save as many lives as possible, but Admiral Morrison had other plans that went against all military logic. "Wilson, is there any way to reverse the process?" The question seemed impossible, but the Admiral was not willing to give up without trying every option available. The science officer worked frantically at his console while consulting theoretical physics databases. Theoretically, yes. If we could generate a precise gravitational counterwave, we might be able to stabilize the star. But it would require the combined power output of the entire fleet, and even then the chances of success are minimal. Minimal is not zero. All ships prepare for synchronized gravitational pulse. We are going to save this system. The plan was audacious beyond belief and bordered on the impossible. 200 human supercarriers would link their artificial gravity generators and create a massive gravitational wave. The slightest miscalculation would result in the immediate destruction of the entire fleet. The gravitational forces involved were powerful enough to tear apart planets. But the alternative was watching billions of beings die in a supernova explosion that would be visible from neighboring star systems. Commander Julia Roberts aboard the UES Nemesis coordinated the technical aspects of the operation. "All ships link your gravitational systems to my console. We will have exactly one shot at this." The coordination required split-second timing and perfect synchronization between all vessels. As the human fleet prepared for their desperate gambit, the freed bioships and even some Zephyrian vessels began to join the effort. Captain Lisa Wong commanded the UES Valiant and reported the unexpected development. Sir, we are getting assistance from the aliens. They are adding their power to the gravitational pulse. The sight of former enemies working together to prevent mutual destruction was unlike anything seen in galactic history. Species that had been at war moments before now cooperated to save everyone in the star system. The human example of mercy was inspiring others to act. Lieutenant Amy Collins monitored communications as alien ships throughout the system offered their assistance. Admiral, we have over 50 additional vessels joining the gravitational pulse operation. The bioships are coordinating with our tactical network. The cooperation was spreading rapidly through both fleets. The moment of truth arrived as the star reached critical instability. Solar flares erupted from the surface and radiation levels spiked throughout the system. The combined gravitational pulse from over 300 ships lanced out toward the dying sun, carrying the hopes of billions of beings. Captain Sam Rodriguez aboard the UES Intrepid watched his gravitational generators strain beyond their design limits. All power to gravitational systems, give everything we have. Every ship in the fleet was pushing their equipment to the breaking point and beyond. For a terrifying moment that seemed to last forever, nothing happened. The star continued its violent pulsing while everyone held their breath. Then gradually, like a wild animal being calmed, the stellar oscillations began to stabilize. The gravitational cascade was reversing itself. Commander Pete Watson aboard the UES Thunder monitored the star's energy output as it slowly returned to normal parameters. It is working. The stellar destabilization is reversing. Cheers erupted across the human fleet as the impossible became reality. The threat of supernova faded as the star settled back into its normal fusion cycle. The combined gravitational pulse had succeeded in saving the entire star system from destruction. Billions of lives had been preserved through the cooperation of former enemies. Empress Vexthara watched her final weapon fail and finally understood the truth about humanity. They were not just another aggressive species seeking conquest and domination. They were something entirely new in the galaxy. A people who fought not just for victory, but for the principle that all sentient beings deserved freedom. The Empress had ruled through fear and violence for 1,000 years. Her empire had conquered dozens of star systems and enslaved countless species. But now she faced beings who offered mercy even to their enemies. The concept was so alien to her that she struggled to comprehend it. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the alien homeworld. His final transmission to the Empress was simple and direct. Your Majesty, we have saved your world, freed your slaves, and prevented the destruction of your system. Now let us talk about the future. The words carried the weight of absolute victory achieved through moral superiority. The Empress looked around her command center at the faces of her advisors. They all knew that the old ways were finished. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. One where humanity's ideals would reshape the very nature of interstellar civilization. Her empire was crumbling around her, but the humans offered a path forward based on cooperation rather than conquest. With no other choice remaining, the Empress finally agreed to negotiate. The 200 human supercarriers that had entered orbit as instruments of war had become symbols of hope for the entire galaxy.